Welcome to Align Your Stars podcast. In this episode, we delve into the captivating journey of Natasha Sizlo, a writer based in the heart of Los Angeles. Her story is a constellation of accomplishments, beginning with her impactful contributions to magazines such as Variety, Cosmopolitan, and Shape magazine. Her path led her to Detour magazine in 1998, where she flourished as a senior editor, skillfully covering celebrity culture, fashion, and technology, and others. But Natasha's journey didn't stop there. She transitioned her storytelling skills to fashion brands, blogs, and even found herself in the realm of real estate at the agency, recognized from the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and $1 Million Listing at Los Angeles. Astrology played its part too, revealing Natasha's point of destiny to tell a story. And today she's living that destiny, captivating audiences through her words. Join us as we uncover Natasha Sizlo's alignment with the cosmos, her pursuit of destiny, and her unwavering commitment to the art of storytelling. Get ready to be inspired as we journey through the stars and narratives that shape our lives by talking about her book called All Signs Point to Paris. And the one quote that I really love that she stated is, "I will always believe in magic and I will never give up on love." So if you are up for a credible journey of reading a book that has to do with astrology, love, self-empowerment, look no further and look at this book, All Signs Point to Paris. Okay, so we have Natasha Sizlo right here. Thank you so much for joining the Align Your Stars podcast. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Oh my gosh, I just wanted to say, like, as I said earlier in this recording, I mean, I just love this book that you wrote, All Signs Point to Paris. It was really compelling and inspiring. And I'm sure a lot of audience members and listeners and viewers will really appreciate all that you penned in this book. So would you like to, for those who are just learning about you, can you tell them about yourself and how you got to this point at your life's work?
Yeah, so I'm based in Los Angeles, and the All Signs Point to Paris is a memoir about my journey basically to Paris to track down my soulmate. But it's also a story about kind of a really hard time in my life. I was a firm non-believer, and but I was just having a really, really rough year, right? Like I was, on the heels of a disastrous divorce. I had filed bankruptcy. I was rebuilding my career. I'm a single mom with 2 kids. I just had another bad breakup, and my father was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And it was just like the hits just kept coming. And I had nowhere to turn. And so my best friend, who is a real believer, that I used to make fun of, like, I mean, really obnoxiously, and I do not anymore.
I love it when that happens.
She gifted me an astrology reading. Yeah, I mean, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to do that. I was just like, oh, like, Nicole, love you to my core, but like, no, no, no. Little did I know, it changed my life. And so she gifted me an astrology reading. And within 5 minutes, I went from a non-believer to a full-on believer. And it led me down this path that took me to Paris to track down every man I could find, born on November 2nd, 1968. But also it led me to like a healing journey of opening my heart and healing relationships in my life with my sister and my mother and my father who passed, and meeting his spirit. And it also led to a book deal and much more. So it's been a wild, and I do real estate as a day job. So I've relaunched my career as a writer. I was a writer in my 20s. I'm now 48, and I just started writing again after 25 years and realizing that my point of destiny, my North Node, really is to tell a story, and finding like the truth and in the trust in my own inner voice. And that's kind of what I found through astrology 5 years ago now, I think, maybe 6 years ago now. Totally changed my world.
Yeah,
so I know nothing about it, which makes me a little nervous ever talking. Like, I know nothing about astrology. Like, I know what I hear and what people tell me, or specifically the astrologer that I work with. But what you do is like this whole other beautiful language. You're an interpreter to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I'm just like bow at you
for
what
you do.
It's really complicated and fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, because it's very multifaceted, this art, because we can go really deep. Like you could find all the archetypes playing out in your chart, like your story, your parents' story, your love story, career story, like all the planets and how they are positioned in your birth chart. They detailed everything in between as to how you deal with these certain scenarios. It's just something that you've been instilled with since birth. And that's the nature of how the birth chart works. It's through, obviously, it's not something to say they control you. It's more of like it's a part of you. It's simultaneously working with you in terms of strengthening your soul's muscle, like your soul's endurance, and like in the ways of how you navigate through specific challenges or obstacles, and how you can reach those jewels of, in your birth chart. Like it takes time. And like when you become very receptive, which it sounds like when you had that astrology reading, it just opened up pathways of you discovering incredible like lessons, and as well as like breakthroughs of how you're generating yourself as a soul. And you definitely see that. And like when you're reading your book, I definitely witnessed the transformation, and even seeing like how you navigated through these specific intensities in your life, in the control. Some control issues come through. That's normal. And how you basically broke free from it. And it was through those who you surrounded yourself with. I mean, friendship is very important for you. I see that. Sisterhood is totally important for you.
Huge. And I didn't know that my whole life. I was kind of locked off and ever like, I mean, it's always been a part of who I am in some ways, and in all ways, I guess, but this opened me up, and just, it like cracked me wide open. And you're so eloquent the way you put words to it. It's really, it's been life-changing.
Yeah. You have a beautiful like birth chart, by the way. I was like looking at it before, and I still have it up right now. I mean, you have so much water and air energy. You're a natural born storyteller for sure. You're emotionally in depth. Yeah, I definitely see that. And you have that beautiful, I'll just tell you the big three. You're the sun in Libra, Pisces rising, and moon in Cancer. Oh my gosh, double water air. I have the same thing. So maybe that's the reason why I was very drawn to you. So I'm double water, Pisces sun, Scorpio rising, and Libra moon. So those big three definitely mesh. But not to say that's the only thing, like the only elemental makeup that foretells a writer, but it's more along the lines of you understanding the depth of human emotion, and the depth of how you connect to yourself more intimately. Because the air is more like logical, linear. Maybe I can categorize some things as to why I'm feeling things, but Pisces rising begs to differ for sure.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
Isn't it? Like, and also like the natural gravitation towards travels. I mean, that's what powers you up in this life. I don't know if you knew that already, because you have that North Node in the 9th. You have Neptune in the 9th. I mean, go ahead.
I gotta keep moving out there, right?
Yes.
And I'm feeling a little antsy right now.
That's what actually does give you these opportunities for you to open up outlets of, attracting incredible opportunities your way. And that's what happens in your book when you decide to go to Paris. That's the House of Travels in the 9th. But it's just really beautiful. And I just wanted to ask you, like, your journey as an author is like constellation of experiences. I mean, can you share a pivotal moment that ignited the passion for writing, especially when you went to Paris? And what set you on this cosmic storytelling path? Like, did it happen did you feel like you were starting to write at the time, or was it just like collecting?
Well, I started writing when I was young, right? Like as a teenager, I had kind of a difficult experience in high school, and I was thrown out of boarding school. And my only lifeline were letters, because I'm old-ish, and we didn't have email and all this stuff. So I was handwriting letters and handwriting and journaling. And I discovered myself as a writer. I started working for magazines in my early 20s, and then my magazine folded, and I was having a hard time getting work as a writer. And so I just stopped and I gave up on this like heartbeat of, kind of some kind of storytelling or mode of communication or whatever it is that lit me up from writing, right? My soul's I don't know. I gave it up for 25 years. And then after my father passed, and I made a promise to him on his deathbed that I would meet his spirit in Paris, and my sister and my best friends and I all went to Paris. And I started documenting this journey just for friends and because I was doing targeted advertising to try to find my soulmate, as one does. And so I was just writing on Instagram, not my normal, like regular person. I'm a mom, I have 2 kids and have a job Instagram, but I had this side Instagram where I was just not promoting myself, but just kind of processing the grief of the loss of my father, processing the loss of a relationship, love, adventure, joy, pain, sorrow. And I just kind of, you know, in so many characters, and maybe I just felt like it was safe because it wasn't very big. It was like that, you know what I mean? It's Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's when I started kind of realizing that I writing was fueling me, or I needed to do it again, even if it was like in these small, tiny chunks on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to when I was in Paris, I kind of stepped foot in the Shakespeare and Company bookstore. And it was like, I mean, it was like magic dust, you know, as a writer and as a reader and as a romantic and a, like, I don't know, everything just, I had met a bunch of strangers in Paris who they kind of led me along the way. And all of a sudden I'm with this beautiful YouTuber who like discovered me in a Facebook group. And she like brought me to the Shakespeare and Company bookstore and we started putting up posters. I have a poster. I was looking for a copy of my book because I was putting these posters up all over the
Oh my
streets of
gosh.
Paris. And I still have them.
Wow.
And that's when I was like, oh, maybe I could be a writer again. You know, my astrologer, when I got that reading, said your point of destiny is to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
You're a writer. And I never told her anything. Like she knew nothing about me. And I thought, I can't even imagine that I would be able to do that again because I felt like a complete failure at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back from Paris and I was only home for a heartbeat before I got an email from a literary agent out of the blue. Like she is never like, it was just so like many degrees of separation. She found my Instagram through, I don't know how many different people, and said, I think that there's a story here. And I thought, well, that's weird because my astrologer told me I need to be a writer again. I've got a literary agent telling me she wants to like write a book, and like all these things were aligning. And I was like, and then the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't, you know, work, and I couldn't go on hikes and run and do all the things because I'm a real ADD mover, like have a hard time sitting still kind of person.
Definitely air quality in the chart.
Yeah,
Air
I'm like always all
movement,
over the
spiral
place.
and move. I get it.
Sitting
Yeah.
down and writing a book. I mean, an Instagram is like hard enough, but writing an entire book, I thought, well, there's no way. And I thought, well, maybe there is a way.
Yeah.
And I wrote a few chapters, and she said, yeah, you have a book. If you want to do it, this is the process. And lo and behold, by the end of the year, I sold the book. And then, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, because
it is amazing.
I know it's amazing, like how you mentioned before, like when you just started to actually get into the art of writing, when you just started practicing, or even just like jotting down notes, like you just want to like expel out of you. That's when eventually the literary agent just reached out to you by looking at your Instagram. It's incredible how when you are letting go, just allowing the words to flow through you and you just write it down to paper. And it probably made all sense later when you evaluated all those jottings, right? Something that it's like automatic writing that you did.
Yeah, it was just kind of that you hear some people talk about it. It was almost this part of me, what didn't exist. It was this part of me and this part of me. And it was like, it just went through or something.
It's like a stream of consciousness that came.
Yeah. Trust me, it wasn't always like that when I was writing the book. Most of it was actually, but day to day, like I have been having like a couple months where I'm like, I do not feel in flow. It's like, where is that? Like, why do I not feel in flow? How do I get back to that? But that's just,
that's what usually happens too, because whenever like publishers or editors, they recommend you to set aside a day where you're just writing that same hour. I don't think it works very well that way. Some people are very structured to do it, but in your case, with your charts ecosystem, you're all air and water. It's about the feeling and about the actual, if you have like an accumulation of a lot of mental processes and information, that's when it's ready to come out, because you have to kind of generate it. From the upstairs, and then from the heart, that's when it comes out. Like you have to immerse the two principles together.
Someone told me like, you should just like be like Stephen King. You sit down for 5 hours. And I was like, well, first of all, I would love to be like Stephen King, but I'm not. Like, I've never done this before. And I would wake up every morning. Like I kind of wake up at 4 a.m. Everybody would be asleep, and then just like I didn't have the space to be awake enough to self-edit. Do you know what I mean? So I would just kind of blurrily just kind of channel and write and then you go back through and you clean things up, right? You throw out half of what you've done. Like there is like where it's less spiritual and more like ego and mental and stuff like that when you're actually editing and cleaning things up. But that's really the baseline of how my writing process for the book worked,
Yeah.
Instagram. Yeah.
Thank you. But where are you now in terms of your perception of love? Like, how are you seeing love? Like, if you don't mind me asking this question, of course, and I don't want to give off spoilers in the book, but where and how, like, basically how, like, from your past experiences and how you're connecting to people right now, do you notice a difference in terms of past relationships with people and as well as for the future relationships that you're attracting?
Yeah. I mean, I think the real difference from kind of before this journey to where I am now is I really kind of boxed myself in, and I just, my heart wasn't very open, even to letting love into loving my ex-husband, my ex-boyfriend, like realizing grief is really love. Realizing, when I was in search of something, it was like trying to fill all of these things on this list that like I had. And now it's very, very different because I know that I have all those things in my life. I know that I have, I had this blue wish jar that I wrote about where I would kind of write down, everything I was looking for in a perfect partner. Whether it was like, I want somebody who'll eat pizza in bed with me. I want great sex. I want somebody who'll love my children. It was like dumb things. It was funny things. It was drunk things. It was angry things. It was happy things, like all the stuff in a jar. You can't do that like for one person. And I don't do that anymore. It's like, you got to just like love and accept the beautiful, flawed human that they are and realize all those things in that jar. At least this is what
That's beautiful. No, I love hearing that because I feel like out there right now from what people are promoting, like manifest your perfect partner by writing down the qualities that you want in this person.
Right.
But in terms of how I work with clients, I'm like, what do you want in terms of how you want to feel in the partnership?
Right.
Note that. And it sounds like
Yes.
you are in alignment with that because that's the most important thing to pay attention to. Because when you're looking at the fine qualities of what you wrote down, this person, projecting all that into that person, that's what could be very unhealthy. Yeah.
And so that was the biggest change for me. It's like, no, that's not serving anybody.
No, definitely not.
No.
And it's really good to start preserving like yourself, and not say preserve like you're closing off, not at all, but it's more along the lines of you evaluating your true feelings as to how you feel around people and why, and pinpointing things that are really left unresolved, because in that case, that's the point in your life where you're probably not ready for a relationship altogether. Time to go through like the inner workings of clearing out certain traumas and issues and triggers and all those things. So, that's why it's really crucial. And even a part of your birth chart, like I look in, even like in the aspects that you have, your Venus and moon are in square with each other. It's like a heavy lifting kind of energy. It's not to say it's in any way bad that you're not going to have a relationship, but it's more along the lines of you learning how to acclimate your Venus expression, which is in Libra, and your moon, which is in Cancer. It's more about you anchoring in your true feelings and sentiments in the relationship, as opposed to the perfection and the beauty of what love could bring. You know what I mean? Like, and things in a perfect package, whereas Cancer moons might like give you the messy emotions. I need that just to like help clear out, and as well as connect with someone who has depth,
Oh my gosh, I love this. We need like an offline reading.
Oh my God. Anytime. I mean, I always do relationship readings. That's pretty much my niche, but I also go through the lines of self-empowerment. Like I love to position the client because they're like, when's my love partner coming? I'm like, hold on, go back. What's going on with you? How are you generating yourself as a soul in terms of your understanding of how you see love, how you love yourself? It was a huge thing for myself as well. Like when I was like going through my journey of looking for my partner too, it took a while. Like I was like 28 when I found my first partner. And I was really calculating and met my husband and all that stuff down the road. But yeah, I mean, Venus and my North Node are aligned. So it's like a huge trademark of who I attract with my practice. But yeah, that's the nature of your birth chart. And it's so beautiful because your Cancer moon is so happy, that expression, and very healthily expressed for sure, because Cancer is naturally ruled by the moon. I mean, wow. I mean, I could tell you this, like in terms of you learning how to anchor in self-care and self-love, it's a huge thing for you. And even where it's positioned in the fourth house, it's more about building your emotional security in relationships.
Oh my God, I love this. This is good.
Yeah. building your own like emotional security within the home as well. Like you,
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
I know we're going to a reading right now, but I mean, it won't be like that for long, but like you probably were felt very untethered for the majority of your life when it comes to
Yes.
home.
100%.
Yeah, you're on the quest of learning what home means.
Right.
And
Oh,
it's mostly for you. Sorry, go ahead, Natasha.
no, keep going. Yeah.
But it's really, please tell
Keep
me
going.
more. Uh, but it's more along the lines of you connecting to those, like building your own tribe, building your own, you know, sisterhood, women around you, and of course, men too. But
Yeah.
building that healthily expressed feminine energy is a huge thing for you in this
Yeah.
life, especially
Yeah.
with that Venus square moon. Like that's a, it's not to say it's a wound per se, but it's like, I like to call like squares as endurance. It's not tensity. I mean, it could be tension filled if you're not working with it well or not peace with it,
Uh-huh.
but you could build up such incredible strength when you learn to work and embrace its qualities.
I love it.
Yeah. Do you have any questions about that? Yeah.
Yeah, like so many, but
Yeah. But anyway, in terms of like what's next for you with love or even like venture, like if you don't mind me asking this question, like how do you view yourself when it comes to your profession? Like do you want to be a full-time writer, or do you see yourself working a lot with people like in terms of the agency?
I like having both, to tell you the
Yeah.
truth. Because when I had to take off quite a bit of time when I was writing the book, because I had a really, really tight deadline I had like 9 months to finish the first manuscript or the first draft. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that as a first time author? So I kind of stepped away from my business and had partners and whatnot help me,
Mm-hmm.
but I really missed it. And I think, it's as like much as like writing kind of feeds like my soul, human connection. And I mean, even when you mention like the importance of home, it's so funny. I actually didn't recognize that what I do professionally. Sometimes I
Yes.
kind of write it off like, oh my God, I sell houses. How annoying. I'm a real estate agent. We're so annoying, you know? And
Yep.
then I thought, no. I help people find their home,
It's
which is
beautiful.
beautiful. And I didn't recognize that in the same way that I do now. And
Yes.
so I would never step away completely from either one of them. So I'm continuing to write. And right now I'm focusing a little heavier on the real estate because I backed away from
Beautiful.
it. Yeah. So it's like kind of these ebbs and flows. And my astrologer actually told me, oh no, wait, maybe it was a psychic. That like put a little bit of like, love back into that side. And I was like, okay, that works. So
Yeah. I also see a lot of people who have like that fourth house energy, like especially with the moon position there, like you need your home to be a certain way. You
yeah.
need for it to be beautiful or comfy. You like to decorate, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh.
Quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And nesting is a huge thing for you. It's a strong suit.
Yeah. I
And
feel
even helping other people. Yeah, go ahead.
exactly. And helping other people do it as well and learning from them too, so it's kind of a two-way street. So
Yes.
I've met some of the greatest people in my life through, I like that real estate, you never know when you open a door who's going to walk through. And so I've met some incredible people. And the same thing happened with my book. And we were talking about this before we started this podcast. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
how did you discover my book? How are we sitting here today talking? Like, how did me walking through Shakespeare and Company bookstore in Paris and thinking, gosh, maybe I'll start writing again, come to this moment where I can like connect with a beautiful soul like yours? It's really wonderful that these two different kind of career paths, if you want to call them that,
Mm-hmm.
have led to really some of like the most beautiful connections of my life. So
Oh,
both.
that's
Yeah.
really sweet of you to say. And I used to go to Shakespeare and Co. all the time in New York. They
Mm,
always had cats there. I don't know if they had cats in the Paris one, but like they just seem to have like it seems to have a very mystical quality to it, Shakespeare and
yeah,
Company. There's just
for
something
sure.
very, I don't know, like it was in my early 20s when I used to visit. I used to be a hairstylist too. Like I had a previous incarnation as a different profession and different kind of atmosphere that I immerse myself with. But like, I've always pictured myself being in this world, astrology, and as well as writing, because books just keep me alive. It always has, even for myself growing up. But it's so beautiful that you mentioned Shakespeare and Co. I was like, huh. I'm like, I had the aha moment too when I was in that bookstore to write a book for myself.
I
Now,
love it.
thank you. Yeah, thanks for saying that. But what's the one thing that your successful venture endeavor that you did not expect? Talking about the book right now.
I mean, from the adventure that I went on to Paris, I did not expect a book. So I did not expect that. I thought that was just, and that was my grief journey. I was actually healed. Like a lot of people see it as like this really funny rom-com. I'm like, well, I was actually grieving in this like really funny, weird way.
Yes.
So that was the one thing I think that, and more to come, that I can't really announce yet, but there's been a
Okay.
lot of really great things that have come out of
Good.
that journey, not to mention the people that I met along the way and that it changed my life so much, I guess. And then if you're asking what's come out of from writing the book, I think actually learning to trust my own voice, and that just kind of discovering that I have a voice, and that I was kind of told to be quiet growing up and to conform. And I kind of went to, a couple schools or environments that, women were kind of taught to not really have a voice. So for me to learn that it's okay to speak my truth, to do something wacky, to write about it, to talk about it, and to be celebrated for that. Like when I first started this, a lot of people looked at me like, oh my God, this woman is crazy. Cut to, 4 years later, I'm being in the Washington Post and the LA Times and this and that. I'm like, you know, it taught me not to listen to my own doubts and also the doubters around me. And I don't always abide by that. So it's actually good for me to say it out loud right now, because sometimes I live in fear or worried about what people think of me, or I read one bad review on like Goodreads and it like ruins my day, Learn not to listen to that, and to just trying to like stay in touch with my own voice. And that's what astrology taught me too, is like, look inside, where's your inner compass? What feels right? What doesn't? And that's kind of, just learn to trust myself more.
Oh, I love that, because you are definitely speaking like a true Chiron in the first house. I talk a lot about Chiron. It's the asteroid that has to do with our wounds that we continuously go through. But then eventually when we lean into facing that wound and learning at the root of it all, we find the healing balm. Now, I talk about Chiron a lot in this podcast, I'm telling you, because it's the one asteroid that I work closely with as myself, or in my birth chart. But in your case, in your first house, it's the house of self, where you felt like when you were opening up, expressing your true vulnerability and any feelings that you had that came to mind, people pretty much shut you down. Very common. I could tell you that. But then once you learned how to like lean into it, and to ignore and anchor in your true self, anchor in your true voice by expressing without any fault or without any doubt, that's when you find the healing balm, and therefore you help others. And that you could definitely find the book that you wrote. You get chills. I'm telling you, like I'm getting chills as I said it, because that's how Chiron could work. And it could work with anybody. It's not to say they all become writers of that first house Chiron, but it's more along the lines of you learning how to trust that part of you and be true, because your Chiron's in Aries. You're meant to break through the barriers of doubt, really initiate that spark within you, and just crank it up and nurture that fire that you have.
Oh, what a great reminder. I know it because I've done it, but then I still will fall back. I'm just like, oh, maybe I like said too much or did too much, or I shouldn't do this, or what did and I start doubting or reading, that's when the hardest part about writing a memoir is all of a sudden, I was completely in this world. It was me and my laptop during COVID, and then all of a sudden you become aware of all this outside, chatter and voices and reviews and people and teams, and a lot of it's positive, but not all of it is. Like people like to hide behind their screens and,
of
whatever.
course.
It's really hard to not be affected by that. for me.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive. I'm like, how do people do this? And I've had conversations with, different people like, how do you do that? But
That's totally a Pisces thing. I know. I get. You're like, no, how could people be so bad? Or in the Libra, like you have that Libra sun. You're like, you see the good, you see the light in everybody, or the silver lining. And sometimes when you do face those situations where, some people just have unhealed wounds within themselves, they just feel like they have more power behind the computer, and that's just the way they express themselves. But I'm telling you, like, once you lean into your Chiron path, which is yours, and you're actually going to go through a Chiron return in about 2 years, actually. Not to say it's anything scary or anything like that, but it's about something coming full circle by then. In other words, because Chiron goes around.
I know what it is.
And all the planets, and all the planets go around, and we go through returns. So in your case, you're going to have a Chiron return, very common around like the age of 50. That's where you're basically entering a new threshold of an awareness. And in your case, it's in your first house. So something will come full circle by then when it comes to your true expression.
I love that.
Okay. It could be what you were hinting before, I'm thinking, but
I mean, it sounds a little bit in line with
not going to probe anymore. I get it.
I know I'm not allowed to talk about certain things.
No, I get you. I understand completely. I was actually even reviewing like the date that you were looking at with your soulmate, November 2nd, 1968. Yes. And that falls in line with your 8th house. I mean, wow. It's just 8th house energy, especially with synastry. I'm talking about the romantic links that you make with people. Whenever you have a person's sun in the 8th house, oh my gosh, it's very revelatory, continuous, like feelings of needing to dig deep within yourself. And you see those parts of you, you're like, I did not even think I was going to be that way. Or it's like I like to call the 8th house like the closet we all have that we don't want to see, or we don't want to show.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's like a underworld kind of energy, the 8th house, but not to say if anybody who has a partner that falls in the 8th house, it's not going to work. It's more along the lines of you constantly feeling that you need to expose yourself or just draw out any feelings within yourself that needs to be expressed. And
I had a lot of fun in that underworld until I didn't. Just to be fair, like that underworld can be kind of fun until it isn't. But
even the
nature. And Philippe is still in my life, by the way. Like he's been like, wait, you did what? I was like, I wrote a book and you're in it. And he's like, oh, Natasha. I'm like, I know.
That's amazing. No, that's
he's been a huge supporter. All of my exes, like I had to send my manuscript to like every ex or man or in my, unless I completely changed their identity. Yeah, that was a real journey.
That's wonderful. But like even like the Mercury expression, Mercury is your writing ability, and even the way you generate energy and ideas, it's through the 8th house realm. So as you look deep and expose those parts of you, that's when you pretty much trail out to incredible writing material. So just keep going with that, Okay.
All right.
Yeah. I love it. So I would love to ask you now, like, who has had the most influence in your life, like at this point now in your journey?
I mean, it's a real kind of combined effort, obviously, but I would have to say my father, getting this astrology reading and coming up with this idea, I mean, to kind of make sense of it to anyone who's listening. I had a really bad breakup. I left this guy, Philippe, even though I loved him madly. And then I asked my astrologer to look up his birth chart. And she said, well, he's in line with your point of destiny. And I thought, he can't be the one. And my dad was dying. And so I decided that I would go find every other person on this planet that I could find born on November 2nd, 1968 in Paris. Like I thought I had I was in checkmate with the universe, and then I was like, ha, I got you, and I got out of it, and then went on this. It wasn't as serious of a idea as it was, my dad was dying, and I told him that I was going to go to Paris to track down every man I could meet born in, because of an astrology reading and blah, blah, blah. And my father was not a known believer, right? He was Mr. Science and Facts and Logic and MIT. And, just, it drove me crazy growing up, actually, because it was so about facts and logic. But he said to me on his deathbed, sounds to me like you're going to Paris. I'll meet you there. when he said, I'll meet you there, and he gave me the gift of, this isn't ending. I mean, that was one of the last conversations that I had with him alive. But he kind of gave me hope that there was, he opened my heart to having faith and hope and believing. And I get chills like just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because listen, there's the power of one sentence, I'll meet you there. When I was little, he said to me, anything can happen. Anything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And we have our words have a lot of power, whether it's truly just like, or even a smile,
Yes.
we have so much more power than we know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, somebody else had told me in my lifetime, the words we speak are magic, and it's true. It doesn't take much. It can take one sentence, and it can change a child's life. It can change an adult's life. And that one sentence changed my life. My father obviously changed my life on many levels, but it was him having the belief in me, and just kind of promising to be by my side, which I believe he truly still is. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my answer to that one, I guess.
I believe that completely. And,
Yeah.
even, and I'm going to more of like the spiritual talk right now, and I usually do, it never ends.
No.
It's continuous. Like our loved ones are just the thought away. That's how close they are. And I even feel like such a strong presence. My grandmother, like I've known her for until I was like 27. And she was a huge pivotal figure in my journey with love. And as well as even when I met my husband, I was going through really tumultuous times. Like I could talk about this forever, but she even guided me. Sound presence on my right, telling me what, telling me and encourage me to keep going,
Yes,
in my
keep
journey.
going.
And they always do. And
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's incredible how they just show up and they give you the signs and everything. And I think your dad just gave you a few signs as well in your journey.
Yeah. Oh my God, it was incredible. I was like, and I never saw it before, because I
Yeah.
always thought I'll see it when I believe it, as opposed to when you believe it, you see it.
Yes.
And that was the biggest shift for me in this whole journey, because once I was open to the signs and to all of it, then it was just like boom, 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 boom. And in a way that even like my friends and my sisters never really like, we don't even understand your life anymore. I was like, I know, because it's so weird, all these things that are happening, but it was because I was open to it.
Yes.
Not always that way, by the way. And I have like really crappy days and bad things happen to me.
Of course. And yes, you can manifest very strongly.
But it's energetic, I can tell. I'm like, oh, I did that to myself because I'm just clogged. I'm not clear, you gotta, but it takes work. It's not always easy. It's like eating junk food. If you eat junk food all the time, you're going to feel bad.
Oh, absolutely. And it's even like the way we generate our thoughts and generate the way our body feels, it escalates. And you feel that very strongly as a person, because you got that, I'm talking astrology, I'm tying it into it. You get that Sun Pluto conjunction in the chart. I don't know if you remember that with your birth chart, but you manifest very strong. I don't know if you knew that. Like you have a lot of power and muscle into attracting things, or noticing and even perceiving what could happen. Not telling you to become psychic or anything like that, but you could foresee results, and therefore you have great creative solutions to things. You have problem solving ability because you could see what could happen.
Yeah. I was told that. Yeah, I've been told that a couple times. And then when I actually like kind of tried, and I was like, ooh, well, that's weird. People are like, how did that happen? It's almost like it already happened and then you lived it. And I'm like, kind of, yeah.
Yes. And that's the nature of Pluto. And in your case, in the realms of relationships, I mean, Pluto has to do with the, death, also rebirth, has to do transcendent experiences and how you evolve constantly in relationships. But it's also the, it represents the veil in between, like the in between realms, like basically like what we have to do to discard like the old perception of how we generated ourselves. And therefore, even the people we attract in our lives, and just not to say remove them completely, but just basically instill those boundaries needed.
Yeah.
In order to like help preserve yourself, preserve your energy. And therefore you attract better outcomes in your life story too, because of that. Because Pluto is like, it's known as like the big bad. Like people look at it like it's scary. I work with Pluto very closely. So again, we're attracted to each other for a reason. We talk to each other. Like we're talking now because I'm a Pluto person. I got it on my ascendant, literally on it. So nature of Pluto and how it generates is mostly like helping you clear the way, the debris, because you can't really walk through a whole heaping mass of stuff very well, because you're going to actually tire yourself out more. It's all about the physical removal of situations and ideas and how you perceive the world around you, and learning how to find that stillness and quiet. And therefore you find the clarity needed for any life decisions you have. Now, in this case, it's in your area of relationships, which is really nice. It's on the opposite end of what I have, but it's very powerful. And thank you for answering that question about your dad. I mean, I'm not surprised at all that he's still a presence in your life. They continuously guide us throughout our lives and even beyond, and it never ends. So looking back, what advice would you offer to your past self based on the lessons you've learned through your romantic memoir? And how have these lessons shaped your outlook on love?
What advice would I offer myself? Oh gosh, let me think. I think to have faith, you know. Yeah. I mean, there's so much, but I think that along the way I had some real bad hits, and I just lost any kind of sense of faith or hope or whatever you want to call it. I used to think that faith was a religious word, and I was like, I don't use that word, but it's, to me, not. It's a very just like believing, having hope, having trust in yourself, and like that you are your best guide. I think I kept looking for outside sources. And by the way, a lot of people think that, astrology is an outside source, but for me, it's a tool to come in, right?
Yes.
So it's the opposite. It's actually a way to go inside. So that's probably, I mean, off the cuff, but there's a lot of things I would tell my younger self, by the way. But I do believe that everything had played out the way it was supposed to. And so maybe I wasn't meant to tell my younger self something. And, that's just kind of the way my life has been. Maybe I wouldn't tell myself anything, because I really do love where I'm at in life, and I'm grateful for everything that I have. So I don't know, maybe I would just be like, you'll learn it later.
I love it. No, I love what you said, but even like the way you said, look within, I feel like that's the most important thing. And not to say like always reside forever, but really cancel out the external need for validation or the external sources of what's true to others. You really have to navigate through the currents by your own doing, and just relax into it as opposed to fighting against it.
Yes. Exactly. Fighting against it is not going to get you in the right place. And don't get me wrong, I fight hard for things, and I work really hard, and I take action. And so if I just had an idea and I was like, I think I might like, go on this adventure, write a book, or do this. I mean, that's very different than like, I put it into reality pretty quick. Like, I'm a pretty good doer. Way too much. So my kids are like, wait, what are you doing? My poor children. So like, oh my God, mom has gone off the rails again. I'm like, here I am. But also to know when you're pushing hard that you're actually going in the right direction. So you can feel it when you're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm like flying and being hit by asteroids, as opposed to like just kind of going down a river. Right.
Yeah.
So.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. So at this point now in your journey, what is your proudest accomplishment?
Oh, my kids. Like,
I knew you were going to say that. It's such a Cancer moon mama.
They're phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, like, I just have so much to learn from them every time. I'm just so, I mean, I'm not proud of them, because then that actually makes it sound like I'm responsible for their incredibleness, which I'm like, I guess I had a part in them coming onto this planet, or they somehow, but I have so much to learn from them. They're such incredible
teachers.
Yeah. So it's, but I mean, I guess in my own career, like I'm proud of myself that I actually finished writing a book. That was hard.
Yes, I'm sure. They
that I trusted
like
myself enough to do it, and that I didn't listen to that former self that gave up and didn't believe that, I had anything worth saying, even as a woman, to be like, oh, no one's going to find this interesting, or this is kind of out there. And then being like, you know what, just do it. And then realizing, oh, that worked. maybe I do have something to say. Maybe, I get so many letters and texts and emails and meeting people in person, strangers, and they're like, my father passed. Thank you for this. Or I went to Paris,
Oh,
or I had this heartbreak, or and I
yeah.
realized we have to share. There's so much power in sharing our stories, and it creates a connection, community, healing. And so I am proud of myself for having that belief in myself that I could do that, because I can see how it's touched some people, and I've been
Mhm.
touched by them by hearing their stories in return. People have, come up to me in a line and said, let me tell you about my dad or my mom or my ex-husband or my children, and this sharing of all of this and hearing your stories and your chart and your, you know, how you're living your life. It's how we are all connected in one. So
Oh, I love that answer. Thank you. And just like, as you said, like the ways of how you reveal like your true self, not to say be a tell-all to everybody, be a bard on the street talking about your story, but like talking about those crucial moments in your life where you've crossed paths with intensity and struggled, strife, how you basically transcended above it, how you had the support of beautiful people in your life in terms of pushing you in the right direction or in the direction that was best for you. And
yeah.
that actually helps people build this trust that there's so many incredible people out there that is ready to listen to their story as well. So,
Yeah, flaws
uh,
and all, because it's really easy to be like, oh, my life is, like an Instagram post. It's not, that's why I was
no,
like, I filed bankruptcy, I hit rock bottom, I am insecure, I'm selfish, I'm like all these like things, and I'm still lovable, and I'm still human, and I'm still, imperfect and striving to be better and, good and, all those things. So I think it's just not trying to be perfect. Yeah.
yeah, I love that. All right. So it's the last question of the podcast. And I love to ask all my guests, what helps you find self-acceptance and empowerment?
Well, it sounds kind of like I'm plugging like astrology here, but it's true. Astrology has led me to, to self-acceptance in a way that I had no idea. I mean, when I had that first reading, I thought it was going to be this like, headscarf kind of hippy dippy woo woo. No, it was really like a path to understanding my chart, myself, my truth, all the different sides, all the different planets, all the different energies, and how they were all okay, and that they were supposed to kind of be there, as opposed to kind of hating on yourself for certain things, kind of welcoming in parts of myself. So I think that, quite honestly, astrology has made a huge impact. I don't live my life by it. Like, I'm not reading charts every morning, and I'm not like,
Mhm.
dialing an astrologer or my astrologer like every 5 minutes for every question, because well, number one, it's super expensive, but number two, it
Yes,
can
it
be,
could
right?
be.
Yeah, it could be if you're like, hello, I have another question. But it's also like finding that it led me, as I mentioned, like back to me. So it's like,
Mhm.
okay, you get the tools, you come back in, you learn about it. And then so every, once a year, I do a check-in, but then it just comes back. So
Amazing. I love that. So thank you so much for sharing. Can you let the listeners know where they can find you?
yes. Okay. So my my Instagram is Natasha Sizlo. I also have my work Instagram, which is I work at the agency. There's a Netflix TV show called Buying Beverly Hills. I'm on that sometimes. And that is Natasha underscore the agency RE. And then I have a website, which is natashasizlo.com. And yeah, reach out. I love hearing from listeners, readers, random people on the street. I'm an open book.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining me today. And you are such a beautiful goddess, so sweet and so open and receptive. Thank you so much for sharing your story with
Oh,
us.
thank you so much for having me. Really, truly, such a joy.
Thank you. And I will talk to you soon. And thank you all for listening to Align Your Stars podcast. And I will see you next time. Be well.